Hello friends, this is a video that I have been wanting to bring you for a long time. Today, I finally bring you a list of insane fights of the Baki series. In this list, we are going to review the most humiliating defeats that have occurred throughout the more than 1,000 chapters that this anime and manga series has. In this series, there have been good, bad, and disappointing fights. This time, we will talk about those fights in which the loser didn't even have a chance to win. And if you consider that any other fight should be in the top, feel free to say so in the comments box. And I also clarify that Yujiro will only appear twice in this list. Otherwise, I would have to add almost all his fights. But well, without more to say, let's go with this top.
Beautiful.
We open this list with a character from the Reitei tournament. This guy held the title of Kaioh, a title only given to the best warriors in Chinese martial arts. Now imagine what this guy felt. He spent his whole life practicing Chinese martial arts and thought he was among the best in the world. But suddenly a sick guy who looks almost dead arrives and humiliates him in front of all the Chinese Kenpo masters who were present. It's true that Baki, being a hanma, had a clear advantage. However, it is still humiliating the fact that this guy could not even connect a single blow to Baki. And what's worse, Baki didn't even try to attack. For him, this was a simple game. Chokayo is left in this position as he was a very arrogant guy and thought he had the victory in his hands. He definitely got the lesson of his life in this fight. Now we have this guy who is so irrelevant that I don't even remember his name. It doesn't really even matter what his name was because after the beating Oliva Biscuit gave him, I doubt he is still practicing martial arts today. This guy bragged about having the toughest skin in the world. He said he had spent his whole life training to have skin as tough as a diamond. Mr. Unchained grabbed him by the head and with a little pressure left him as if he were a crushed toy. We could say that a human steamroller ran over him. All his talk was for nothing because Oliva Biscuit crushed him as if he were nothing. This guy probably can't even walk on 2 feet anymore after that fight, but knowing the doctors on this show, it wouldn't be impossible. This one is funny, because thanks to this fight, Motobe was seen as the weakest character in the series. The reality is that Motobe's biggest mistake was entering this tournament where weapons were not allowed. He is not a bad fighter. He is an expert at fighting with weapons, but without them, he doesn't stand a chance. In this round of the tournament, he had to fight Yokozuna, and was totally crushed by the sumo wrestler. He tried to take down a guy who weighed more than twice as much as him. He even tried to use the Onki technique against this sumo wrestler, but as we could see, it didn't even tickle him. And while the truth is that with weapons he is a god, but without them he is just a normal guy. Another thing to mention is that in a Baki spin-off, this same sumo wrestler faced Doppo and managed to give him a good fight, so apparently this was not a random guy. Obviously, we couldn't omit this tremendous humiliation that Ali Jr. suffered. Ali challenged Jack to a fight and thought his boxing skills would be enough to knock out Baki's older brother. The reality is that Jack Hanma used him as a punching bag, and worst of all, it was Junior who brought it on himself. Jack was quietly enjoying his dinner, and this guy suddenly came to challenge him to a fight. Junior thought that just because Baki had beaten Jack, he could do it too. Many were upset that Ali got such a beating, others however enjoyed it, as they hated the character from the beginning. After getting that beating, Ali Jr. learned that it's not a good idea to try to steal the protagonist's girlfriend. Another lesson we learned here is that you should never piss off the guy who's over 6 feet tall while he's eating. And well, Ali Jr. repeats participation in this list, because we couldn't omit his fight against Baki. I say fight, but I really don't know if we can call it a fight. This was the fight that was being prepared since the beginning of the arc. The characters were talking about it as if it was going to be the fight of the century. Even Yujiro seemed excited to see this fight. Unfortunately, it was one of the most disappointing fights of the series. Ali Jr. didn't stand a chance against Baki. Baki didn't even break a sweat and Junior looked like a rookie. Most humiliating of all was that his father had to step in to save his life. Otherwise, Baki would have put him to sleep forever. And while since then, we have not seen him again in the series, maybe he went to live somewhere else and changed his name. And again I remind you that it's not a good idea to flirt with the main character's girlfriend. I don't know how you see this fight, but the truth is that it was brutal. The winner of the fight was obvious from the beginning. Everyone expected a crushing victory for Yujiro. However, after such a tremendous beating, the ogre was not satisfied and finished off everyone present. And they were not just spectators watching the fight, they were expert fighters. Among them was Hanayama. But it didn't matter because Yujiro beat them all anyway. I guess I wasn't the only one who felt like helping poor Baki when I saw him being beaten up. Come on, Baki at that time was still a brat, and yet he faced the strongest creature on Earth. Needless to say, Yujiro had no consideration for him. He treated him like he would treat anyone else. This will be Yujiro's second and last participation in this video. The humiliation suffered by Ryu Kaioh was insane. The guy was an eminence in China. After Kaioh, he was the second most respected person in martial arts. Yujiro beat this guy in such a way that probably nowadays is not even in martial arts. We could say that his face fell off in shame, literally and figuratively. This character ended up being wasted. They really could have used him in another way. I'm not going to say he's useless because after all he got to fight the most broken guy in the series. Any man who fights against Yujiro has the script against him, but if he manages to survive, he will have achieved the greatest feat of his life. The truth is that this guy was a very interesting character. Retsu admired him, and maybe if he hadn't had to fight the ogre, we would have seen his true power. Sikorsky could not be missing in this list. After all, he is the most humiliated character in the whole series. Stay tuned because this guy may show up again later. I wonder if Sikorsky had a lot of self-confidence, or maybe he was just really dumb for believing he could fight Yujiro, Baki, and Oliva Biscuit at the same time. Whatever the case, he decided it was a good idea to take Baki's girlfriend hostage. Sikorsky, in this series, we already learned that it's not a good idea to mess with Baki's girlfriend. Anyway, Baki was quick to find him and beat him up. Baki was so angry that he wouldn't even let him put on his underwear. And as icing on the cake, Oliva Biscuit appeared and knocked him out with a single blow. The funny thing is that everyone present saw Sikorsky with his underwear off after being beaten by Baki and Oliva. Imagine getting out of jail to have something like that happen to you. The Russian didn't stand a chance against Baki, and even less against Oliva Biscuit. But hey, at least Yujiro is still alive thanks to Oliva Biscuit, who came at the right time. This is one of the wildest fights in the series. Dorian humiliated Kato physically and mentally. Kato was very confident that he could beat Dorian. But another thing this series has taught us is that you should never underestimate your opponent, and even less if you don't know him. It could be said that Kato entered the lion's den at the moment when he followed Dorian to his hideout. Perhaps he thought that after what happened at Tokugawa's house, Dorian would be an easy prey. However, it was quite the opposite. Dorian was thirsty for revenge after what happened. He had to escape from Tokugawa's house to save his life, and then this guy comes to bother him while he was healing his wounds. I actually felt a little sorry for the beating Dorian gave Kato. The most shocking moment was when he realized he was under Dorian's hypnosis technique, and never really had a chance to win. Simply one of the best beatings in the series. I had already told you that Sikorsky was going to reappear on this list. Jack Hanma and the Russian had a street fight all over Tokyo. They started in a public restroom, continued in a phone booth, and ended up in the underground arena. In fact, Jack knocked him out and then took him to the underground arena. However, it is to be admired that the Russian didn't care where the fight took place. What came next was a game for Jack. He treated Sikorsky as he wanted. In fact, the Russian, even using weapons, had no chance of winning. Jack was too generous in not doing to him what he did to Ollie Jr. Many say that Sikorsky is the weakest of the prisoners, but you also have to give him some credit. The guy never turned down a fight. Did I already say that Sikorsky couldn't be left out of this list? Well, the top would not be complete without the next fight. Jack had withdrawn from the arena as he felt this fight wasn't worth it, so he gave Gaia the opportunity. The master of environmental combat gave Sikorsky such a beating that it still gives him nightmares today. And this is not a joke. In fact, Sikorsky has his own spin-off series with Gaia, and in one of the chapters we can see that the Russian still has not overcome that trauma. The fight was brutal. What more can be said that we haven't seen? Sikorsky was used as a punching bag twice in the same night. The worst was definitely when he started begging for mercy. Even when he was face to face with Yujiro, he didn't look as scared as he did at that moment. Sikorsky is a guy who likes to fight dirty, but on that occasion he got a taste of his own medicine. If we had to give medals to the most humiliated characters in the series, Sikorsky would undoubtedly take the gold medal. But in spite of everything, he is one of my favorite characters. This was a head-scratching moment for fans of the series. Jack wanted to fight the legendary swordsman, Musashi Minamoto. However, he had to defeat Motobe first. And you might be wondering, why did Motobe want to stop Jack? Well, Motobe got into a protective role. His mission was to stop the other fighters from fighting Musashi, as he believed they would all die at the hands of the samurai. So he confronted Jack to prevent Musashi from hurting him. During the fight, Jack became confident because he thought Motobe was a clown and not worth it. What happened on that occasion continues to cause controversy to this day. Motobe, the guy who easily lost to a sumo wrestler, humiliated Jack in such a way that he even made him lose all his teeth. Jack knew what he was up against, but he still decided to accept Motobe's challenge, who was obviously armed to the teeth. Jack was so badly wounded that he couldn't even stand up and had no choice but to stay on the ground until Motobe left. I think this fight made it clear what level he is at when he uses weapons. We all know that without them, Jack would have stomped him. This is another fight that happened in the manga. Maybe not many remember it, but Musashi treated Doppo as if he was a martial arts novice. Doppo was very excited to face the legendary swordsman. He seemed more like a Musashi fanboy. Before the fight, Doppo made a couple of demonstrations of his power. This was enough for Musashi to create a plan and learn all his moves. Doppo tried to knock Musashi down with a headbutt. However, it didn't work and Musashi stopped him with one hand. After this, the samurai cut Doppo with his invisible swords, but the bald man dared to say that those were imaginary cuts and were not going to really hurt him. That's why Musashi asks for a real katana from Tokugawa. Doppo tried to kick Musashi in the back of the head, but he stopped him with his katana. The most humiliating thing about this situation is that Musashi was not even trying to end Doppo's life. In fact, he was doing his best not to hurt him seriously. After being knocked out by the samurai, Doppo admits that he felt completely humiliated. He accepted that Musashi was a better fighter than him, however. He said he was glad to have had the opportunity to face a legend like Minamoto. Definitely our favorite Russian takes the gold medal in the category of most humiliated characters in the Baki series. But this time he doesn't come alone. He is now accompanied by Yanagi, another character who was also humiliated by Motobe. Worst of all, Baki beat up both of them at the same time. Even fighting 2 versus 1, they had no chance of winning. In fact, Yanagi even cried at the end of the fight because he knew that a boy had beaten them up. In their defense, they can say that they faced the second strongest man on Earth, but it is still humiliating that they dared to fight Baki, and he easily beat them up. This is a fight that many already know about, even those who don't read the manga. Oliva Biscuit challenged Nomi no Sukune to a sumo match. He literally challenged the master on his own turf, and it didn't go well. Oliva managed to land a couple of punches in Nomi's face, but failed to knock him down. Nomi dared to call him skinny. This made Oliva angry, and he wanted to knock him down in every possible way. Unfortunately, all his attempts to knock Sukune down were useless. Even with all those muscles, he couldn't move an inch. Biscuit got frustrated and threw a punch at the Rikishi's head, but to his surprise his hand was fractured. It was as if an ordinary human had punched a concrete wall. Oliva wanted to use his more muscular pose as a last resort. However, Nomi grabbed him by the ribs and told him not to do it, or he might hurt himself. The Unchained was confident in this last move and did it anyway. However, we were all shocked to see Nomi break Oliva's ribs and knock him to the ground. The Unchained was knocked out on the ground, and according to the narrator, if Oliva had the strength to cry, he would have done so. Many people hated this fight, and they were right because it was a total humiliation for Oliva Biscuit. Fortunately, everything seems to indicate that this character will have his redemption very soon. If you want to know more, just read the most recent chapters of the manga. This fight continues to be very controversial. On one side are those who believe Dorian shouldn't have been humiliated in this way, and on the other side are those who think Dorian deserved it. The reality is that Dorian never stood a chance against Doppo. The only chance Dorian had to finish Doppo was in their first confrontation. On that occasion, he managed to cut off one of his hands, and if they had continued fighting in those conditions, I am sure Dorian would have won. Dorian's mistake was thinking he could surprise Doppo twice with the same tricks. Doppo didn't play around and left him completely unarmed, even making him vomit up a bottle of acid he had in his stomach. The best part of the fight is when Dorian thought he had Doppo under hypnotic control, but still couldn't defeat him. Doppo gave him a beating that even made him tremble with fear. But this wasn't the worst part for Dorian. The worst part came later when Kato arrived in a wheelchair to finish what they had started. Dorian ended up crying and begging for his life. This is simply one of the most satisfying beatings in the series. Seeing Dorian totally helpless is priceless. The guy who always fought dirty now ended up unarmed and begging for his life. Yanagi repeats participation in this list. This time it was Motobe who gave him the taste of defeat. Motobe stood in Yanagi's way and challenged him to a fight. The criminal accepted, thinking he would be an easy prey. However, it was the opposite. Motobe immediately stabbed him with a katana in the leg and attacked him with all kinds of weapons, even cutting off his poisonous hand. Worst of all, Yanagi didn't want to accept defeat. Motobe had clearly outclassed him, and the winner was already decided. I said that Yujiro was not going to appear again in this list. However, it is very necessary to mention him since he was an important piece in this fight. Yanagi didn't want to accept defeat. He refused to lose even when he was on the verge of death. Undoubtedly, the worst thing about losing is cheating yourself and not accepting that you have been defeated. Yujiro knew this, and that's why he knocked Yanagi out with one punch. He was never one of my favorite characters, so I really enjoyed this moment. This was a fight that was repeated twice. The first time was in the underground arena. On that occasion, Tokugawa organized a tournament in which Nomi had to face a Yokozuna. The match ended quickly, and Nomi emerged victorious after breaking his opponent's ribs. The funny thing is that this sumo wrestler stood up even though he received the same damage as Oliva Biscuit. Was this Yokozuna on the same level as Mr. Unchained? In any case, this guy did not accept that defeat and asked Nomi for a rematch. The fight took place in a random house. It was not an official match, but the Rikishi accepted. And although this time the Yokozuna managed to connect a couple of punches, the result of the fight was the same. Nomi defeated him quickly and left him knocked out on the ground. Remember that Nomi had just been beaten by Yujiro, so he was not in a good mood, and that's why he ended the fight quickly. Poor Yokozuna never showed his face again after being defeated twice by the sumo god. We all know that this fight was won by Katsumi. However, it was Hanayama who was in control throughout the fight. Katsumi couldn't land a punch on Hanayama, and when he did, he couldn't do much damage. Hanayama beat him throughout the fight, even seriously injuring his leg. There were several moments when Hanayama could have won the fight, however he didn't. Katsumi ended up taking the win, but later admitted that he didn't feel he deserved to win. It may not have been such a humiliating beating, but it was a great lesson in humility for Katsumi. It would be very interesting to see a rematch between these two in the future. They are currently at their best, and it would be hard to guess who would win. This was one of the most recent fights in the series, and also one of the most disappointing. Kehaya had been introduced as a character that was on Sukune's level. In fact, his plan was to face Nami. It took Itagaki half a year to develop this character, but in the end, he ended up being just another jobber. Yujiro made him look like a rookie in Tokugawa's house, and the guy had no choice but to run away with his tail between his legs. That match was scheduled against Doppo Orochi in the underground arena. We were all expectant of what was going to happen. We thought it was going to be a close fight, but unfortunately, it was a total disappointment. Doppo broke Kehaya's foot with one punch. Yes, the guy who bragged about having the strongest legs on the planet now had his right foot completely broken, and this happened in the first exchange of blows. This fight was nothing more than a warm-up for Doppo. Kehaya had no chance of winning. At one point in the fight, Kehaya tries to submit Doppo with a chokehold, but it doesn't work, and Doppo takes the opportunity to break his ribs and leave him without ears. It was a total humiliation. Kehaya couldn't even connect a punch. Doppo was in total control of the fight until the end. And it didn't end there, because after losing, Kehaya looked for Doppo in the hallways of the arena and ended up being humiliated for the second time in the night. What bothered us the most is that more than half a year was wasted with this character. We were all waiting for Jack's arc. And well, I think that's all for today. If you liked the video, please leave me a like, and tell me which of these fights was your favorite. Remember that you can leave your ideas for future videos in the comments box. And well friends, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked it. I hope you have a nice day or night. See you soon.